Greetings fellow mammals, today the commonly praised DRS-IAR. As usual I will go over the stats and the loadouts, but there will also be a string of argumentation going through all of these chapters, where I will be trying to convey why I disagree with a lot of the S-tier handouts by my colleagues. And don't get me wrong, I do understand why people put this weapon in S tier, but I must disagree, and at the end of this video you will hopefully understand why. But now let's take a look at what this gun offers straight out of the box. The DRS shares the damage model of both the M433 and B36A4, meaning 25 up to 21 meters, 20 up to 75 meters and 16.7 beyond. That's a BTK of 4, 5 and 6. The fire rate of the DRS lies directly between the two aforementioned weapons with 771 RPM, so we get a time to kill of 233, 311 and 389 milliseconds. A bit slower than the M433 and slightly faster than a G36. And now we will see how headshots can impact that performance even further. We have a few more graphs today because this is the first weapon where we encounter both hollow point and synthetic tip ammo. Just for context, the G36 gets both of those as well and they work the exact same there as they do here. But as usual we will start out with the regular standard ammo. Here we can observe a full drop across all ranges if you land at least 3 headshots, which is highly unlikely for the average player. Hollow point ammo with 1.5x produces the same drop but with 2 headshots instead of 3, so that's a bit more realistic, and synthetic tip with 1.75x has the same effect, but it rewards you for landing an additional headshot by dropping the BTK one more step in the second and third range. So technically 3 headshots with this ammo type can kill out to 75 meters. Sounds awesome! Well, yeah. Why don't we first take a look at the bare naked weapon to see where this could fit. Let's talk about the positives first. The iron sights are usable and the stationary accuracy is really impressive. Great. Now the negatives. The recoil is quite substantial, the moving accuracy, considering the ranges this weapon wants to shine in, is the opposite of impressive. The hipfire, although in line with its weapon category, is utter dog shit, and the ADS speed, draw speed and sprint to fire time are horrific. So to conclude, if we could get the recoil in check, weren't be moving at all and were already aiming down sight before we engage the enemy, this thing would fucking tear them apart out to 60 meters in full auto with no issues. And it could still do that reasonably fast far beyond that range with some decent tap firing. Very impressive. However, if we do want to move while shooting or before shooting, all of that falls apart. So why don't we start with my first build to see how I try to approach all these issues and the problems you will encounter along the way. First things first, 20 points for a suppressor. I wish the spotting mechanics were different, but it's a situation, so this is mandatory. For the barrel, the heavy extended, this improves accuracy during prolonged fire, which is what we are definitely going to be doing because this weapon is a 5-shot BTK for the most part, and because the barrel is also extended, it will increase our bullet velocity on top of that, which makes it even better for the upper mid to long range. Also, this costs nothing. It's the same as the basic barrel. For the moving accuracy, I then put the blue laser on here, which of course also turns the hipfire into an at least acceptable state for indoor fights or getting rushed, and now I need a grip that reduces the recoil and ADS speed so we can at least reach 300 milliseconds. That is far from my personal comfort zone, but that's just what you will have to deal with when you play with LMGs in general. I picked the slim angled one here because I want to spend the rest of my points on the long suppressor to make the recoil more bearable and on a red dot sight, which will also help with recoil because of the reduced zoom level. And as you can tell, we have already reached the spending cap. This is it. No budget even for a fast magazine. And no, I will not downgrade my suppressor for that. I prefer it this way every day of the week. And that's where the key argument comes in. The support class has an LMG proficiency. That means when you use an LMG while being a medic, the ADS speed will be reduced by one more step. So right now we are at 300 milliseconds, and if I pick this setup on my support character I will get 250 milliseconds. The menus don't tell you this, because of course they don't. But with this decision we can reach an acceptable level of speed. For me personally, 200 milliseconds would be the sweet spot, anything below that is luxury, but 250 is just about okay, and anything higher is starting to annoy me and would impact my preferred playstyle. This setup we are looking at right now is what I would call peak performance. The accuracy is great, the recoil can be managed by normal players, the hipfire is usable, and we are still suppressed. Obviously the 30 round basic mag is a bit sad and the mobility is still dogshit, but there isn't much you could do about that anyway. Yes, I know the rail cover exists, but putting a cherry on a turd doesn't turn it into a Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte. And to circle back to the headshot section earlier, feel free to explain to me where I can fit an ammo type in here that costs 25 points. I'll wait. I'm not saying the headshot ammo itself is bad, it's just the cost that is completely ridiculous in my eyes. And another problem with this loadout is that if you use this as a non-support class, you will have to endure those 300 milliseconds of ADS speed. I would say for most people that is going to feel like shit. That means it will require you to adapt, playing more defensively, more passively, more slowly. If you can do that to accommodate this weapon, it will reward you. The base performance coming out of this thing is still nuts. Don't get it twisted, but if you have difficulty adjusting to that playstyle, it simply won't work for you. You could of course completely circumvent this issue by picking support, which is what I would recommend for this setup. But if you don't want to change classes, the next setup might feel a bit better. For this one we accept a few more shortcomings in order to not change our playstyle. That means no blue laser, so shit hipfire, but still getting that accuracy through the light barrel because you do need that, and that also means we no longer get the velocity buff either. We still have the suppressor here and we still have the red dot, and the rest of the points can then be spent on the grip and magazine. Obviously this is what we primarily changed it for, so we can pick an ADS grip again in order to reach that magical 250 millisecond mark. You can choose from two paths for that result. Either you go slim angled again, then you have enough points for the 36 round mag, or you go ripped stubby, that will get you a bit more recoil control, but then you can only afford the 30 round fast magazine. Personally I prefer the latter, simply because I primarily use this weapon in its intended range, and reloading in gunfights like that usually shouldn't be an issue if your positioning isn't complete trash. So this setup can actually be used by all classes without heavily limiting aggressive play, but you trade long-range accuracy, velocity and hipfire for that. If for some reason you want to use this as support, you could also adjust it a little for a special bonus setup. Alloy grip, because your class itself is the ADS buff, normal 30 round magazine, and then the thermal optic. This can turn you into the mid-range Terminator. I don't have any clips of it unfortunately, because Nvidia decided to change my settings after an update. Yay! So you will just have to trust me on that. Nonetheless, this bonus loadout as well as the two main ones will have a shitty sprint to fire delay and overall mobility either way. And there isn't really anything you can do about that that would be worth the downgrades on other ends in return, which is a conundrum that perfectly leads us into the tier list ranking. The DRS is a fantastic weapon for medics. And to circle back to the intro, all those YouTubers and streamers praising it were playing exactly that. I watched 12 videos from 12 different channels, which is the usual thing I do to avoid blind spots or personal bias, and I haven't encountered a single person playing this thing on any other class than support. If you can name one, please let me know in the comments. I would hate to miss out on that. But from my observation I can only conclude that all those S tier ranks that were given out to this weapon heavily rely on you using this on one class and one class only. And that is simply not how I rate on my tier list. Weapon proficiencies should be a bonus, not a requirement. The only exception I can agree with for that rule are the sniper rifles, because the entire subclass is built around them. That's it though. Everything else is open weapons. So for my judgment, the DRS has to face the full class perspective. And in that light, it is a very fast killing, very accurate, but very slow and very build limited gun. And unless you are either willing to adapt your playstyle or majorly downgrade the weapon in order not to do so, then this won't be a pleasurable experience. For players that already have a passive playstyle or only play support, none of that should be an issue. But from my point of view, this is an assault rifle falsely trapped in the LMG category, with all the downsides and none of the upsides. Yes, you do have access to a 60-round magazine, but can you really use it efficiently? And yes, there is a bipod, but can you really lay down sustained fire with this LMG? You can only ever go into one direction and one direction only. Either the accuracy is shit, the recoil is shit, the capacity is shit, or the various speeds in general are shit. This entire issue could be solved if we just had a few more points to spend. In my opinion, basic attachments, for example, should cost nothing. That would be one way to do it. The other option, and probably similar to what a lot of people will write in the comments, is to simply not use a suppressor. And to that I will just say no. As long as the spotting mechanics work like they do currently, I will not recommend setups without a suppressor to my target audience. I do understand that really good players have no issues making up for the exposure, but again, I don't make these videos for you. You are more than welcome to share your perspectives, and I do appreciate all the helpful comments and the general improvement focused vibe on the Discord server too. But please understand that not being spotted will help a regular player more in the long term than having 15% less recoil but a red Dorito over the head all the time. Learning the maps, the modes, proper positioning, and when to engage and when to disengage is much more important than learning how to get kills a bit faster. One leads to the other, but not the other way around. Long story short, if you tend to play a bit more slow and defensively, or you are a support main, the DRS would be A+. Performance-wise, this gun is the middle ground between the M433 and the G36, both in accuracy and fire rate. Therefore, an easy recommendation for anyone that likes to annihilate people from close to mid-range. But for my all-inclusive ranking, it will have to accept being placed in B+. I would rather recommend the AK-4D to my buddy if he is playing engineer and prefers mid-range weapons than this. I am looking forward to your comments, but keep it civil. And that's it for today. Thank you for your time, and I will see you on the battlefield. Sorrow out.